You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House. You're watching Worldview 2, a Brannon House television network.
The Tamara Scott Show. Tamara has served as the state director for one of America's largest pro-life, pro-family public policy organizations. In 2007, Tamara was named one of America's top 10 most influential kingmakers by the Religion News Association. Tamara has spent years proclaiming and defending the values of a Christian worldview that is the foundation of our constitutional republic. And now, here is your host, Tamara Scott.
Hey, everybody, welcome. This is Tamara Scott. This is Freedom Friday, where we have talked to you about the plight of political prisoners since January 6, 2021. We've now seen most of them out of prison. Tim Rivers, our co-host since December 2022, will give us an update on that today, but we want to get right to it. Now, it is Friday the 13th. Think whatever you want about that day, but tomorrow is Flag Day. Should be a day when we celebrate. We talk about the U.S. flag. Instead, there are uprisings, staged insurgencies planned across this nation. You can go to nokings.org and find out about this group that is strategizing how to destroy this country. So if you're a God-fearing, constitutionally minded American, guard yourself, behave yourself, because if you're in a blue state or a leftist state, you'll be the ones they come after, not the folks that are fomenting this unrest. This has nothing to do with anti-ICE raids. This is everything to do with anti-American raids, people who want to destroy our free public as we know it, our free republic as we know it. All right, stay tuned. We're going to hop right in. Tim Rivers, welcome to the show.
Hey, another Freedom Friday, and there's so much happening today. I don't think Friday the 13th is a bad thing. A lot of incredible things have happened on Friday the 13th. Google that or Grok that and see what you find. An amazing amount of history has occurred on Friday the 13th, good and bad. But again, across this nation, we are seeing the bad. It's reminiscent of 2020's Summer of Love. And before I get to showing you a couple of videos of the disturbances, which have spread even to my own city here in Tampa and across Florida, I want to review what this is all about. So can we just bring up on screen one? Let's just think for a moment why we're so, what's going on here. There are, in 2020, 88,000 border crossings, of which almost 90% were apprehended. 90%. In 2021, 660,000 border crossings. 660,000. Between 2019 and 2024, the U.S. Border Patrol estimates 11 million unauthorized entries into this country. 11 million unauthorized entries into this country. Now, what does that mean? Well, every one of those individuals is using the resources of this country. That's 11 million Americans, and you're going to see the real number in a second, who are suffering because they don't have access to the resources that are being used by people who in many cases do not pay taxes, are not here legally, are actually criminal elements within our country. And why do I say that? One report says that the United States grew by 4.1 million in 2 years. Well, that doesn't jive with 11 million unauthorized border crossings, does it? So that number by the U.S. survey is wrong, big time wrong. If that was true, that would mean that illegal crossings had grown 28.2%. But actually, according to them, since December 2020, we are at 18.6 million illegal immigrants in this country. That is not counting expired visas. That is not counting students who shouldn't be here. That is real, live, illegal, undocumented immigrants in this country. 18 million. All right. Can we jump to number two? Why is this important? Why is this important? Because of who these people are. Let's do on screen two, please. In the fiscal year 2024, ICE made 431 arrests, with 71% of those individuals being criminals. What do I mean by criminals? Well, By criminals, I mean that they were held for not only illegally being here, immigration-related violations, but they were violent assaults, sexual assaults, weapons offenses, even homicides. That's who these people are that were apprehended. Now, granted, ICE focuses mostly on the criminal element of illegal immigrants because they are overwhelmed by over 18 million of them. There aren't that many ICE agents. But let me throw another number in here, just a mind-boggling number. 81,312 non-citizens with criminal histories in 2024 had 516,050 charges. That's not a shoplifting criminal, folks, okay? These are very serious and dangerous people in this country. And this is who the left and the folks who I really like that page because they unmask all of the agencies under their partner logo who are participating in this. So you guys know who to counter protest. You know who to call. You know who to call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators and representatives you don't appreciate this type of anti-American behavior and funding of insurrection. I'm going to use that word freely because my next guest is going to hammer it. Insurrection is what I call this because you're throwing firebombs at police officers. You're destroying property. Once again, we're burning buildings and looting Walmarts and stores within the areas. It's just absolute anarchy. And that can't, once again, there is a group. I know you guys who watch the shows this week, you know where this is coming from. This is coordinated. And this webpage that she just mentioned really, really unmasks who's behind this coordination. All right, so I don't know how to say this any further. These people are a threat to America. They're a threat not only because they've come here criminally and they're a draw upon all of the resources that many Americans are struggling to find themselves, but also because of the criminal element that's involved in the number of people who have come over here for nefarious purposes, not because they wanted to become Americans, but because they wanted to exploit America. All right, so why did I show you this? Because I want you now to see, let's jump back to see some violence from 2020. You remember 2020, Summer of Love, and the madness that spread across this country over really not everybody could agree on what it was all about. It was just all about being mad. Let's run video number 1, please.
Police, stop!
What are you saying, bro? You want to get
It's been nearly 3 weeks since Milwaukee Democrat Tim Carpenter was assaulted by protesters.
I think some of that video was pretty graphic, but I wanted to underscore for you how violent the left was in 2020. Then I compare that to what have I been showing you for 2.5 years, folks peacefully and really respectfully walking through between the velvet ropes in the Capitol, taking pictures, saying, God bless you to police officers, thank you. Yes, there was violence, but we've also seen how it was incited. And so when I compare that to this, The words insurrection come to mind, not for the ones on January 6th, but what I saw in the summer of 2020, taking over Portland, declaring autonomous zones outside of the government's control. That, my friends, is insurrection. So what's happening right now in Los Angeles is beyond shocking. And I'm playing this for you because I want to emphasize in my conversation with my guests what your responsibilities are as Americans. Here in Tampa during the protest yesterday, only a small handful of brave, patriotic Americans showed up with American and MAGA flags and red hats to counter-protest the over 250 people who had surrounded the mayor's in downtown office, City Hall. And the confrontations that you'll see in some of the video, that if you go out there and look for Tampa protests, you'll see that it doesn't take very many patriots to stand down a bunch of people who really don't believe in what they're doing. But I need to show you what's happening in LA, and then we're going to talk a little bit about it. And my next guest, I hope, is going to underscore why it's important for not just people like him and like me and like Tamara to stand up and speak and to actually act sometimes, but for us to be the impetus for you to see the examples, because everybody has this duty. So let's run that number 2. And again, this is graphic, so I That's pretty violent stuff. Okay. And this is over wanting to have those 18 some odd million illegals stay here and consume American resources and commit crimes right up to homicide, rape, sexual assaults, human trafficking. Look at this guy they just brought back. Where will it end, folks? And who will end it? We're gonna thank one of our sponsors and jump to break. And when we come back, that's going to be our topic: is where will it end and who will end it? Thank you so much for listening, and let's say thank you to one of our sponsors.
All right, so this is the Bella Grace that we offer to all of you. This has the collagen, the astaxanthin, the cat's claw. In 2023, got an award for cognitive function. In 2024, got an award for in the sports arena for active ingredients, nutrition, and format. On your screen right there, you can go to Tamara, TAMARA.BellaGraceGlobal.com, Tamara.BellaGraceGlobal.com. It's a great way to find this little sachet where you can take this collagen and help yourself boost your immunity. Why do we offer it to you? Because we want you feeling your best. So you can join us on these front lines fighting for your family and your freedom. More information at Tamara, TAMARA.BellaGraceGlobal.com. And we've also posted on the Tamara Scott Show Facebook page funding for some of these groups through tax dollars, funding to going to groups helping fund some of these riots you're seeing against your free republic and against your freedom. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
All right, and we're back. Tim Rivers, you've got a special guest for us again today.
I do, and I'd like to welcome back to the show somebody we had on a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Stuart Rhodes. I asked Stuart to come back. First, I want to clarify a few things for the audience, so I'm going to ask him one very generic question that he's had to answer a million times. And then we're going to get into the meat of whose job is it to protect the Constitution and to actually respond to this type of anarchy within our country. I'd like to welcome back Stuart Rhodes. Thank you, brother.
Hey, good to be here, brother. How are you doing?
It's another Freedom Friday. So, the fight for freedom never stops. I keep telling people, you want to have freedom, it's eternal vigilance. And that's what I wanted to kind of talk about today. I'm going to ask a real basic question from you, Stuart. Those of you who watched our show know who Stuart Rhodes is, have an idea of his involvement. Stuart was one of the people charged with the ridiculous crimes of insurrection and sentenced to some severe penalties, really over and above sentencing for anything that had happened that day.
18 years, yeah.
On top of that, really it received only a commutation, not a full pardon, which I've asked all of you to please continue to go to pardonthe14.com, get your postcards and send them to President Trump. We want everyone to get pardons of innocence here. Stuart, I hear ridiculous claims all the time that the Oath Keepers are this crazy militia of people who are trained in deadly martial arts and weapons, who are basically a standby vigilante group for anybody who is in power on the right. Would you please tell everybody exactly why you formed the Oath Keepers and what it is as a fraternal organization?
Yeah, so I was a paratrooper in the Army and also a volunteer firefighter. And so I formed up Oath Keepers after we saw the gun confiscation in Hurricane Katrina was a big wake-up call. Police officers brought to help ended up following unconstitutional orders and disarming people who were just trying to protect themselves. So it was a big motivator for forming the organization. And the mission of Oath Keepers, what Oath Keepers was and still is an association of current and former military, police, first responders, firefighters, EMS, search and rescue. And the dedication is to fulfill the oath we all took to support and defend the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. And our main mission up front was to reach out to the current serving, remind them of their oath. We all took the same oath we did, and the obligation is to refuse unlawful orders, and also to teach them more about the Constitution they swore an oath to defend. If you don't know it, you can't defend it. That was the whole point of the organization. And it's really crazy to see the left, to this day, describe it as one of the most violent, right-wing groups. We never ever had to use force. We did thousands of security operations nationwide, including 9 times in Washington, D.C. Trump rallies all over the country. We do escort services for folks for after they got out of the Trump rally, because they have to go through Secret Service to go to a Trump campaign rally. And Antifa would know that they'd be, unarmed when they came back out and they would attack people. So we would post up retired police officers. About 30% of our membership were retired cops. Retired police officers and military veterans would post up outside the venue. We would coordinate with Secret Service. They would know who we are, where we are, how to identify our guys, how to reach our leaderships. We didn't have any issues of misunderstanding. But then we would give armed escorts back to the cars to people that came out of the venue. Because Antifa likes to attack the elderly, disabled veterans, families with kids. They attack the vulnerable. So that's what we did, and successfully. In all that time, no one we ever protected was ever hurt. No venue that we ever protected was ever shut down, and we never had to use force. We just used our presence as deterrence, and that was effective because Antifa doesn't want to get shot.
Yeah.
Funny how that works. But we never had to actually use force. Never had to pepper spray anybody. Never had to shoot anybody. Never had to use a ass baton on anyone. Never punched or kicked anybody. So it's really bizarre for them to call us one of the most violent right-wing groups. It's just nonsense. We're a bunch of veterans. What this tells you, though, is the left hates and fears retired police officers and veterans because we are competent. Are we capable of violence? Oh, absolutely. That's what deters them, is that capability.
Stuart, I'm going to ask you a pointed question. And in your understanding, because I'm going to go back and at the end of this, towards the end of our interview, I'm going to tell you what I think it stands for. Whose responsibility is it to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Republic for which it stands?
All of us. I mean, look, you are all the militia. To this day, you're all defined by federal statute as the militia. All able-bodied males, age 17 to 45, by federal statute to this day. These are statutes that's been around since the beginning of the founding in different variations. But you're defined as they define the militia as 17 to 45, and then for us veterans, it goes up to age 64 because of our prior training experience. And I believe for military officers, it goes even higher because they can still lead, they can still do their function into their 70s. But the whole point is that from the very beginning of this country, the founders understood that we, the people, are the safest place to put the force of the community. You don't rely on standing armies. They didn't trust standing armies because they knew that a man who's did a career military officer, for example, his whole identity is wrapped up. His pension, the support for his family is wrapped up in his position, and he'll follow orders. So they wanted to have a citizens militia be the safe repository of power. And also, it's really the only thing that works. After a hurricane, we did 14 hurricane relief operations, and we saw every single time the police are overwhelmed after a hurricane. There's no way they can possibly cover all the disaster and unrest that comes up because bad guys will take advantage of any situation like that. The meth heads come out of the woodwork and start robbing people, carjacking people, and breaking into houses and everything else. And so,
and the response was, let me come and take every law-abiding citizen's guns away within the danger zone, right, and leave you defenseless.
That's how it was in New Orleans, right? But I'm just saying.
That's why I have that sign out front that says 2A and law and order for under Trump. I think that's one of the things that many of us wanted to see come back. So let me kind of, I don't want to jump right into about, let me ask you one question that's been bugging the hell out of me. How do you think the DOJ was able to sell this incredible myth of you guys being this ready force militia, on guard, armed to the teeth, ready to come to, how were they able to sell that? Not only to the public, which we know is all brainwashed through mainstream media, unless you're watching shows like this, but how were they able to sell that in court? And I know you, unfortunately, got a firsthand view of that.
Well, first of all, being tried in Washington, D.C., as a Trump supporter is like being tried in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. It's a show trial. It's a foregone conclusion. You walk in the door that A, you're guilty. Orange man bad, orange man follower bad. They see you in the pool. The jury pool in Washington D.C. is hopelessly biased radical leftists. The jurors on my jurors, for example, almost every single one of them said that they had been to a Black Lives Matter protest, some kind of anti-Trump protest, like the pink hat protest, or the March for Our Lives anti-gun protest, that was in Washington D.C. So these are people that are active leftists who, protested Trump from day one. They're down, they drink the Kool-Aid, they're down with whatever cause their side puts out. So that's who my jury pool was, and it's also a jury made up of the supposed victims. The judges described every resident of Washington, D.C. as the victim of January the 6th. And so they're insisting on drawing the jury pool from the victim pool. And the judges themselves describe themselves as victims of January the 6th and describe the horror of that day and all this kind of nonsense. And so you go in there and it's a show trial. And you're dealing with prosecutors, like prosecutors all over the country, who have no morals, no ethical standards, have no problem with putting innocent people in prison to put another notch in their belt. That's the reality of prosecutors. This is a problem we have, a systemic problem in the criminal justice system outside of J6. But they do it all the time. And they do it through coerced confession. Like I was in prison with many guys who were in prison for ghost guns or ghost drugs, meaning that there were no actual guns found on them, like a felon in possession. There were no actual drugs found on them, just the testimony of some other poor schmuck who was threatened with 30 years in prison, took a deal, and part of that deal is to cooperate, which means to bear false witness against others. That's the system we live in. It goes on all the time. With January the 6th, during the Biden administration, that already corrupted system was then weaponized for political reasons against political opponents. That's the reality. And so they spun and twisted, like we did not anymore, because it's ridiculous, but I'm now a felon until I get a pardon. But of course, I had a rifle in my back of my truck. I always did because I'm a trained infantryman. If I see an active shooter situation at a school and kids are being murdered, I'm going to grab my rifle, throw on my plate carrier with magazines on it, and I'm going to go in and save their lives. That's why I always carried in my truck. But I left them in the hotel room in DC, like all of us did. We didn't bring any guns into DC. So if we were intent on insurrection, why would we not bring guns? This is completely ridiculous. So they take what's honorable and good. Some of the best men in this country were in Oath Keepers. Good men like yourself who stepped up as volunteers, unpaid volunteers, to go travel to some strange city to protect other Americans and their right to free speech. And that's why we were in DC on January the 6th, was to protect two permitted events on Capitol grounds where Trump supporters were rallying, and they're going to have members of Congress speak. That's who some of our protectees were going to be that day. And Roger Stone was the keynote speaker. We put a personal security detail on him. So that's what we were doing that day, is protecting other Americans. So they demonize and turn inside out. It's always projection. They committed a coup in 2020, so they accuse us of trying to do a coup. They committed insurrection in 2020, like you said, with the Chaz and the Chop and everything else. And they project onto us what they do. And they project onto us their violence.
Well, now I think that violence is there for everybody to see, where the real source of front line on that side, where the police opened fire with munitions and actually exploding incendiaries into the crowd, an unprovoked crowd. I've brought so many people here to you for 2 years. We've been talking about the January 6th. First, I need the truth to be out here. I need you to understand the truth. That's why we wrote the books. That's why we invite people like Stuart to come on here and talk. But more importantly, I need you to share this information and to share truth with others, because there are so many people who still believe the insurrection theory, who still believe that the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys were ready militia forces coming in with weapons to take over the government, that we were going to overthrow Congress and burn the place to the ground. All lies over and over again. We have refuted them. We have showed them to you in documentary, in testimony, in books, in film, in picture. Now, I'm going to ask you to do something like I always do. We're going to come right back after break, and we're going to talk more with Stuart Rhodes, and I'm going to give you your marching orders. Promo.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
All right, we've got to tell you about our new one of the products we offer because we know you all have different likes and preferences, and we want you feeling your best. So this is one more way you can do it. Some of you use both this and the Bella Grace, like I do. Either way, the lavenders for ladies. These are swish and swallows. You swish for 3 seconds, 30 seconds, 3 minutes, whatever you're comfortable, then swallow. The lavender for ladies, anywhere along your journey, doesn't have any hormonal supplements in it, but if you are taking such, you might want to check with your doctor. The blue is for anybody. This has the glutathione. This is the exciting one because it helps detox forever chemicals, heavy metals, graphene oxide, something else we weren't talking about before 2020, and it also helps detox glyphosate. And so for some, there's a concern, the ag products that have that in it, there are concerns about links to cancers, HPVs, and diabetes. So this helps detox heavy metals, forever chemicals, graphene oxide, and glyphosate. It helps with 400 cellular functions. Because we're oxygen-based, you would not survive 3 to 7 minutes without glyphosate in your system. Folks go to IVs to get this, is a lot more expensive. And then, of course, it wanes right afterwards, right? This is consistent. You can do it every day, and it's a lot less expensive. You can see on your screen the Numi Neuro. That's the mango-colored bottle. Numi Neuro, that helps your mind, your memory, and your focus. Mind, memory, and focus. That bottle, the orange or the tangerine, with your blue, we've seen such great results that the American Brain Council actually wrote such a glowing reference on this that it's considered an endorsement. So you can go to Neumi, neumi.com/TTSS. neumi.com/TTSS and find more information on that. And of course, when you do with the TTSS, you help us as well. And we're grateful for that. So we thank you for that. All right. So Stuart Rhodes is our guest. Tim Rivers is here as our co-host. Stuart, I appreciate what you're talking to us about. Everybody's responsible, right? Everybody's responsible. I appreciate the federal codes and the ages you gave. But let me ask you, we see right now the constitutional duty, is it of any American versus that of any oath keeper? I mean, do you guys don't have a higher oath in protecting or defending the Constitution of the Republic of America? We're all called to it, aren't we?
Well, yes, and that's, I mean, I emphasize this all the time that we focused on men who had taken an official oath as part of their duties, like in the military or police forces. But we also welcome into the organization anyone that wanted to join. We call them associate members, but I encourage them to become a member, become a volunteer firefighter. Join your local search and rescue. Most of them are volunteers in the country. Join your local ham radio club that operates as a emergency communication resource for your community. Become a volunteer EMS, like an EMT. You can tap into the current existing first responder community in your community. They need help, so go join as a volunteer. That's the first step. And that's the closest thing we have left to a actual militia. What we're supposed to have is every able-bodied citizen should be organized into a county militia where they bring to the table whatever their experiences and training are. We'll find something for them to do, but then they also cross-train them and become better at whatever they're tasked with doing, whether it's disaster relief or whether it's security, or putting down an insurrection. Because in the Constitution, Article 1 Section 8, it lists out the purposes for the militia being called up. It says Congress has the power to call forth the militia for three purposes: one, to repel invasions; two, to suppress insurrections; and three, to execute the laws of the Union. So President Trump should, right now, can and should use us, the militia, us, the people. We know that there are jihadis who have infiltrated this country. Al Qaeda is bragging about doing an October 7th style attack, claiming they've got, what, 11,000 cells all across the country, United States, getting ready to do this. So we've been infiltrated by enemies. You've got tens of thousands of military age Chinese nationals, men, young Chinese nationals who have infiltrated the country illegally also. That's, I would say that a large percentage of them are actually PLA troops. They're Chinese communist troops sent in to get ready for what they would do when the time comes to attack us from the inside out. And then you've got the proxies of communist China, the drug cartels from Mexico, who are bringing across fentanyl and bringing across child sex trafficking, and also, as we've seen, killing and raping American women. So this is a situation where you have an invasion, where you have an insurrection now, and where you have a need to execute the laws of the Union in the face of this open insurrection against it. And it's only going to get worse. I think what we're seeing now is only the very beginning of something that's going to be exponentially worse than what it was in 2020. So I think President Trump should list out these emergencies, invoke the Insurrection Act, and then call us all up as the militia in every county, telling the veterans to take lead. All the men come together in every county in the United States. The veterans take lead, organize them, and start training them all up to standards. They can use the National Guard standards, whatever standards President Trump wants to set. They're now under federal command, under the command of the President of the United States. Their governor can't stop them. Their politicians can't stop them. They are organized under his authority, under his leadership, get trained up in their counties. They stay in their counties unless and until he needs them. But I would recommend that he would deploy them down to the border and rotate them in to get some on-the-job training, backing up ICE and Border Patrol on the border, or use them, those are the ones that are trained and qualified enough, use them whenever there's an insurrection in their state or in neighboring states. This is the whole point of all of those militia statutes that have been there from the beginning of this country. And this is the whole point of the Insurrection Act. And the Insurrection Act states that the president, on his authority alone, if he determines that the rights of the American people are not being protected and federal law is not being enforced properly because of resistance, he can bring forth the militia and such portions of the military as he deems necessary to suppress the rebellion. That's exactly what's happening in LA. He's exactly spot on in his legal authority to do that.
And we've seen examples of that in the summer of 2020 with Kyle Rittenhour and some other folks, where individuals have acted under their authority as citizens to try and save property, save lives,
Right.
prevent destruction, even save police officers. We know police officers were killed in the summer of 2020, while none were killed on January 6th.
Yeah, we did hundreds of security operations like that all over the country, and other groups did too. Yeah,
and safely, and it was done safely and well trained. So there are people who are secured in it. So my next question is it? I guess is it fair to say that if we look back to history, all the way back to 1775 and 76, is it fair to say that the people who took these oaths are responsible for us being here and being Americans today? Without them, there would be no America.
Well,
there would be no Americans.
There was no Constitution in 1775. They were defending their natural rights, and that's an important point. Declaration of Independence spells out the timeless bedrock foundational principles of this nation, that the only purpose of government is to secure our natural rights. And when the government becomes abusive of that purpose, of those ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. That was the foundation for why it was proper for us to separate from England and form our own nation. But it was the people as the militia. There was no Continental Army either. It was the militia in 1775, April 19th, that fought. So they were
the shot heard round the world. That was not any great army. That was the militia.
Right. Now they later became the Continental Army, but it was citizens militia, and so that was the experience of the founding generation. It took the people themselves to secure their own lives against attack by the French or the Indians on the border on the borders when they were, forming our country. They fought the French and Indian War. They fought alongside the British government. But then, when the British government became abusive of their rights, then they rebelled, and it was done by the people as the militia. And then General Washington came in and formed up the Continental Army that came out of the militias. So, but the founders always understood that you can raise an army for war, but they wanted the bedrock to be the militia of the people. They did not trust standing armies. And I think they would have the same insight about professional police forces. If a man is a professional police officer, he's more likely to go along with unlawful orders because he's worried about losing his job. And we saw this across the country. We saw it like in Berkeley, California, for the reason why we began stepping up after President Trump was inaugurated. We saw the Berkeley PD follow orders to stand back and just let Antifa attack people in the park. We watched it live stream over the internet, and they just stood back, obeyed orders to just stand there and do nothing while people were beaten. And we saw that across the country, stand down orders being obeyed by police officers because they're afraid to lose their job. I'm sure they're like-minded. I'm sure they're nice people, but they're still under a lot of pressure to go along because they're afraid to lose their job. I had corrections officers apologize to me for me being in prison. They said, we know you're innocent. We know you're a political prisoner, and we just want to apologize for you even being here. But yet they still did their job. If I'd have jumped the fence, it'd have shot me. So, that's the tendency of human nature. That's why the founders understood that. And that's why they said they did not want to have professional armies. They wanted to have the people being used as the force. So that's why I brought up the Article 1, Section 8, those three reasons. One of them is executing the laws of the Union. So really, there should be no FBI. There should be no ICE. It should be we, the people, as militia, called into the president's service to go and execute the laws of the Union. That's a safe place to put the power of the country in the hands of us.
I think we've seen what happens when the power revolves into untrustworthy hands, or into hands that have alternate scenarios in their mind other than a constitutional republic. And that's what I see so much across America. I would say to you that I grew up in an age where every morning I said the Pledge of Allegiance at school. And every ball game, every event that I went to, I stood for the national anthem, removed my hat, and put my hand over my heart. And I meant it, every word of it. Does that not, as citizens, is that not our own oath to be Americans, to accept that?
Yeah, I think you can see it that way. But my point is that there should not be a separation between, the military's over here and the police are over here, and then the people are over here. And that shouldn't be like that. It should be that all of us are the militia. All of us should take part in law enforcement, natural disaster relief, and military defense of our nation. That's what the founders intended. So yes, I understand what you're saying, and I would agree, but what really should be happening is all of those should be together. It should be the people themselves performing all those functions: law enforcement, disaster relief, and national defense as the militia. And yes, of course, you can still have a standing army. You can still have a professional army and a navy. They provided for that. But they have to have funding every 2 years, right? For the army. They wanted to make sure that Congress had a tight control on the purse strings. They didn't want an out of control military, what we have, an out of control military industrial complex now. So yes, there's a place for the professionals, but the safest place and the necessary place. That's what the Second Amendment says what it says. It says the right of the people to keep and bear arms, about a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. The right of people to keep and bear arms will not be infringed. It's because it's necessary. If you want to be free, you have got to have a well-regulated, which meant well-organized militia to be free or safe. You're not going to get either one without that. It's just reality.
Stuart, I know you've been at the forefront of this, and you really, I think everybody has heard me say over and over again since January 21 what a struggle it is to return from this type of thing. I urge everybody, Stuart's Give Send Go is on here. If you haven't seen it, run the page back. Please help Stuart regain his place in our society, because it has been stolen from him unconstitutionally. And I hope all of you, understanding what he's related to us today, will understand that the myth of insurrectionists, of Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and Three Percenters being a threat to the function and the health of democracy is not only laughable, but is just a flat out brainwashing lie. We got a lot to unpack in the next couple of things. I think you need to watch out. Tomorrow, the airing of this show is the 13th. Tomorrow is this day of planned uprising across America and cities. I will urge all of you not to be confrontational, but to show up and to speak out, to represent our side, because that's what we did in November of last year. And we showed them what we, the people, wanted. Maybe that's what these folks need to see as well. Do not be confrontational, but don't be afraid to stand up and speak truth and to show up when it's necessary in order to fly the flag. Stuart, thank you so much for coming on. You know, we learn a lot every time you, one of you guys kind of reveals a little bit more about the inner thoughts of why you were there that day and what the organizations that have been so falsely accused really were all about. So I really thank you for helping reveal that. And I want you to come back and maybe in the future, as we get a little bit past this real insurrection and we see where the nation is going, it may be time for us to, I want to say, everybody, if you did not recognize the action of the civilian militia during the last hurricanes and disasters across this nation, then you just weren't watching, because we brought it all to you. Individuals, I mean, just everybody, forming organizations, taking pack mules of supplies in the mountain. When the government didn't do it, we, the people, did. And that's what the militias are all about as well, because he's right. We, the people, are the militia in all ways and forms. Thank you so much, Stuart, and for your patriotism, for your service, and for your interview today. I will ask you back. And so, brother, keep it up, and we wish you the best. God bless you.
All right. God bless.
We're pushing our break. We've got to go to break. But let me read one sentence from our preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, and ensure domestic tranquility. There you go. It's on all the people. So, and different militaries train for different purposes. We get that, but we all should be upholding the tenets of the Constitution. What you're seeing out there right now are anarchists who I believe are behaving with treasonous acts and going against the Constitution. We'll be right back after this message. Stay tuned.
But with Brandon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world, and it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
Yes, you can get an amen to that. Tim Rivers, it is causing, it's thought-provoking. when we bring on Stuart Rhodes. It is thought-provoking. People hear militia and they just wig, if I can say that. They just
Many of us own firearms. We're trained in the use of firearms to protect our homes and our families. That's no different. It's an expansion of that role, but it's actually under authority. It's not a bunch of people running around with guns. And militias are organized, as Stewart says, under local rules and under local contingents. And basically, they're given training. They are under the control of those organizations. And I think it's no less than what we've had to do in my own community when we had drug dealers move in and we needed to monitor and urge them to leave. When we had crime in the community and we got together to share camera systems and unveil who was stealing within our, it's no different. That is the militia. It is the community working together to protect itself and to protect the republic.
remember those signs back in the 90s, neighborhood watch?
Yeah, that's,
Is
I
that
was
what
a
that is?
captain. For 20 years, I was neighborhood watch captain. That's what we do.
Is that that's a type of a militia right there?
It is. That was a neighborhood militia, but of course we weren't armed, but we would gently urge people to leave if they didn't belong here. So what is a constitutional, what is our duty as citizens, and what does the Constitution say about that? You heard Stewart recite a number of areas of the Constitution that seem to compel citizens to be part of the organizational support of the Constitution and the Republic. Now, yes, not all, we're not asking everyone to grab a gun and become part of the militia. Everyone has different roles to play. I played a different role in my neighborhood. I was basically, watching the streets and making sure houses were safe when people were gone. Everybody's got a role to play. Do you help in maybe a homeless shelter, or you give time to work in a women's shelter or things of that? You're part of the militia. Do you participate in food banks or help folks out, and veterans and handicapped? You're part of the militia. You're the community responding to the need. That is the militia. And I urge people to stop thinking about it as armed combatants and think about it as neighbor protecting neighbor. What does the Constitution say about that? Can we bring up, what did I name this thing? Can we bring up, I believe it's topic number 3, yeah, on screen 3. What does the Constitution say about our duty as citizens? It emphasizes that there are individual responsibilities for each of us as a citizen of the Republic. No, it doesn't mean we all take up arms and rush like the men had conquered, because the women didn't go there and their children didn't go. It was only those who were able-bodied, had been prepared ahead of time and organized. But when it comes right down to it, what are the implied responsibilities of you and I as American citizens? The very first one is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Does that not sound like what an oath keeper does when he swears to support and defend the Constitution and the Republic against enemies, foreign and domestic? Is that not really the same thing in nature as the Constitution is compelling us to do as individual citizens? And then lastly, it also, not lastly, but additionally, it says participate in the democratic process, which is the process of politics and government, which many of us have ignored, expecting it rather to run on autopilot without any intervention and to always be perfect. And when we let our vigilance drop, that's when tyranny shows up on our doorstep. So each of us has a form of this. How do we participate in government? 202 224 3121. I hope I've said it enough so every time I say it, the number like flashes in front of your eyes. 202 224 3121. Call your senators, call your representatives, and speak up about things that bother you. Talk to them and their representatives. Leave messages about the things that you need done in Congress. Otherwise, the car is on autopilot. And I think most of us, it's time for us to grab a hold of the wheel. We look across our country, we see what is happening in the streets, we see what's happened to our economy, to our vision and our views from outside of our country, how the United States is viewed. I think it's time for a big change. And changes are necessary. The Constitution demands that when the government no longer meets the needs of the people, that we reform and reshape it. And that is exactly what we did in November. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. And so, yes, when I look and I see enforcement of ICE, when I see it's necessary to call out the military to keep cities from being ravaged, I voted for that. I voted for that, and I hope you did too. So remember that it's each of our jobs and responsibilities to defend this country. Real quickly before we go away, the 4 that were basically being held that we've been working on, Elias Constantinos has now been released in a federal court. He pled the case was approved. He is now a free man. We are down to 3, I believe. Three, that's 1, 2, 3. So again, thank you. Don't stop. Pardon the 14. Pick up the telephones 202-224-3121. Free the remaining hostages that are being held that have already been pardoned and make them free men. And then let's get these pardons of innocence done.
Is it pardonus.com? Is that the website?
No, that's the film. Pardon us, the film. But it's pardonthe14.com. Pardonthe14.com.
All right.
Again, the last book is now completely out of my hands. I'm done writing. It is in the hands of the publisher, and layout and the artwork is going to be stunning that goes along with this that was created in prison. I urge all of you, we are so under the gun where people need support. People like Stuart Rhodes who have fought nobly for this country and who are struggling to regain their lives, and we are unable to help because we do not have enough money in the kitty to do so. Please don't forget that you are part of the Gulag Army. Order your third book. If you don't have book 1 and 2, please order them as a bundle. Save $10. Use promo code Tamara and get free shipping. This is an urgent call for all of our supporters to please give us a hand. If you already have a book, buy a copy and give it to your library, give it to a friend, give it to somebody who still believes there was an insurrection on January 6th, and don't do nothing.
Right. Thank you, Tim. And I appreciate what they said, what Stuart said. It was the coup was to cover up the real coup. They pretended a coup to cover up the real coup. Everybody, Tim talked about getting involved, calling Congress. Start at the local level. You see what a Gavin Newsom, a Mayor Karen Bass are missing the opportunity to protect their citizens. They are just allowing their citizens to be ravaged, their streets to be ravaged and property damaged. It starts at the local level, and it starts with you, and it starts now. To everybody out there, we ask you to live boldly, love better, laugh bigger, be encouraged, and never be complacent.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.